History doesn't move in straight lines, it moves in cycles. And every so often, that cycle brings us to a point of pressure. Workers pushed too far, costs too high, wages too low, and no one listening. In those moments, something cracks, and ordinary people, often with nothing left to lose, rise up. This video looks at 3 moments when that happened, 3 times when the workers of the world reached their breaking point, what led them there, how they fought back, and what echoes we still hear today. England, 1381. After decades of war and plague, the country was barely standing. Labor was scarce, but instead of raising wages, the ruling class passed laws to freeze them and taxed the poor to fund their failing wars. The final insult came in the form of a poll tax, charged equally to peasants and nobles alike. And when collectors tried to take it by force, entire villages erupted. From Essex and Kent, tens of thousands marched on London. Not just peasants, artisans, shopkeepers, even former soldiers. They carried no royal banners, only the fury of lives bent under a broken system. Their leaders were Wat Tyler, a tradesman, and John Ball, a radical priest who preached equality with the words, "When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman?" The rebels breached the gates of London, burned records, executed corrupt officials, and demanded the end of serfdom and feudal dues. For a moment, the power was theirs. Even the teenage king, Richard II, made sweeping promises to dissolve bondage and lower rents. But it was a trap. At a meeting days later, Tyler was slain under a flag of truce. The movement collapsed. The king's promises were revoked. Hundreds were hanged. Ball was captured and executed. The revolt failed, but its impact lingered. Feudalism in England never fully recovered. The ruling class had heard the thunder and knew it could return. Fast forward 400 years to industrial England. Machines were replacing skilled workers, faster, cheaper, and with little care for those left behind. Enter the Luddites, weavers, knitters, and craftsmen who had spent years mastering their trades now found themselves discarded, replaced by children or unskilled laborers feeding machines. At night, bands of men broke into factories and destroyed the mechanical looms. They called themselves followers of Ned Ludd, a mythical figure said to be hiding in Sherwood Forest. Contrary to popular myth, they weren't anti-progress. They were anti-exploitation. They wanted wages they could live on and dignity in their work. The British government responded with overwhelming force. Troops were deployed. Sabotage became punishable by death. Dozens were hanged. Hundreds exiled to penal colonies. But the Luddites weren't forgotten. Their name lives on. Not as a warning against resisting technology, but as a reminder. When new tools serve only the few and cast aside the many, people push back. America, 1877. The country was deep in a depression. Railroad barons had slashed wages multiple times, while workers risked their lives for 12-hour shifts. In Martinsburg, West Virginia, rail workers walked off the job. They blocked trains from running, and from there, it spread like wildfire. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Chicago, St. Louis, trains stopped. Rail yards were seized, and cities burned. In Pittsburgh, the National Guard opened fire on unarmed citizens. the city exploded. Freight cars were torched, buildings destroyed. It wasn't just about wages anymore. It was about power. President Rutherford B. Hayes called in federal troops. The strike was crushed. Over 100 were killed, thousands jailed. The workers didn't win their demands, but the country had been shaken. The strike proved that labor was no longer a local issue, it was national. It sparked decades of labor organizing and forced the question of workers' rights into the American mainstream. 3 different eras, 3 different triggers, but the pattern remains. Economic collapse, unfair systems, people ignored until they couldn't be anymore. These moments weren't just angry flashes in the dark. They were warnings, signals that the balance had tipped too far. In each, those in power tried to silence the revolt, sometimes with promises, sometimes with violence, but none could fully erase the cause. And in 2025, that cause is familiar. Stagnant wages, rising costs, automation threatening livelihoods, and a growing sense that the system listens only to those at the top. History may not repeat, but it echoes. The question now is, will we listen to those echoes, or wait for the next uprising to shake us awake?